Hi everyone, it's Jamie from White Willow Farms. I hope you guys are having a great day. Today I just wanted to make a quick video going over some of the flowers. I think seven flowers that I think people should absolutely be growing in their first year. These are all either super drought tolerant or disease resistant, or I focus on like easy to harvest in your first year. Really isn't the time to take on like super technical plants unless you're interested in them, by all means, but I just wanted to keep this list simple, stuff that was easy to grow, stuff that didn't require too much watering every day, things that germinated really well and could kind of just be like set out there, and things that were super productive. Also in this list I considered things that sold really well. Looking at some of the fun flowers to plant, they don't always sell well, which is kind of sucky, but the best example I can give is like white flowers are super gorgeous, but at markets they just don't sell. They rarely do. They're never the first ones to go. So that being said, this list keeps into account price of seed, time efficiency, water efficiency, and just labor all in all, as well as the ones that sold really well. So let's get started. The first one I talked about a bit in a last video. I think it was a tips video that I had made, is tulips. I 100% stand by the fact that without a spring flower in time for Mother's Day, having a profitable season is really hard. So I would say tulips, there's some really cool ones, like parrot tulips and whatnot. So if you time it right with some early blooming ones and some late blooming tulips, you can actually have a really great spring season that brings you into some of those earlier summer annuals and summer blooms. So tulips for sure. The second would be sunflowers. It's kind of a no-brainer. You can get some branching types. I recommend the pro-cut ones. They have less pollen in them, so when your customers have them on their counters, the pollen won't fall and like stain their counters. That to me, I personally wouldn't risk it, just because if it's impractical to customers or annoying in any way, they're not going to come back. So pro-cut sunflowers. Another thing on that note is people want what they know. I was actually talking to another farmer this season about how much we love, and I think I mentioned this in another video, but just how much we love the white sunflowers, and like those do sell sometimes, and the plum ones, and another farmer actually mentioned the sunfill ones are one of their favorites to grow, but they just don't sell well. What people want is a plain traditional orange sunflower. In terms of labor, you are replanting them every 2 weeks, so you're doing successions if you want to have them all throughout the season, which I would very much recommend. But for the simple fact that you can put it in the ground, and usually, depending on where you are, kind of just let it do its thing, they're unmatched. Hi puppy doggy, you want to come up? Come on up. She's scared of the cats. Come on up, honey. Oh, poor girl, she's scared. Say hello. Oh, a big wimp. This is our big farm dog, Mercy. Okay, you can stay here for the video, you're allowed. So as I was saying, for the simple fact that a sunflower is just put it in the ground, leave it, I feel like that kind of negates the whole having a succession plant. It's really not that hard. I will say the pro-cuts are single stem, so in terms of bang for your buck and amount of flowers on one stem, you are just doing one and then cutting it down. So each seed is only one flower. So my absolute go-to flower this season was snapdragons. I love them. They are beautiful. People just love them. They're very rarely in people's gardens, so they were really exciting. They're super versatile. I did get a mix, and this year I'm gonna actually ended up getting a bunch more mixes, but I did get some packets that were specific colors that I used a lot last year. but realistically in the mixes, every color of Snapdragon I find just blends so well with other color combos. People love those. Johnny's has a really good chart in terms of what kind of Snapdragons to get per season. So even if you succession plant Snapdragons, it all comes down to the amount of daylight hours and temperature. So it's not going to prolong your season like notably. However, the different varieties come up at a different time. So when you're buying your sunflower, just keep in mind that try to have an early one, a midsummer one, and a late one. Another one that might not be on everybody's list is straw flower. So it's a small flower that really, it adds in the fact that it's bright. Like that's what it adds to bouquets. The straw flower also retains its color really, really well when it's dried. But it's kind of a perfect smaller flower that's great for filler, and you cannot kill straw flowers. So I put it out and it was very much like plant and forget, so I absolutely recommend straw flowers. We also had a pretty dry year this year and they withstood quite a bit and just kept on blooming. The other thing too is people pick them when they're still closed. I found honestly if I let them open a bit more, they would take up a little more real estate in bouquets, and I found them super gorgeous. So they're a little bit less picky, I would say, but when you have to pick them by, and they in a vase, even when they're kind of not looking great, I find that the flower, or like past, you know, when I would say they're in their prime, the flower holds up really, really, really well. So they still look beautiful. Another one that a lot of people have on their list to grow, but a lot of people also really don't recommend it for first year growers, is zinnias. I can't imagine having done last season without zinnias. They're beautiful, they're big. People would come by all the time at my stand and recognize the zinnias and just be in love with them. They were a huge fan favorite, and there's just so many color choices. I personally use Benaries in the Queenie Lime series, which is super common. Most people will say to stick to those because of the Benaries disease resistance. They really are much easier to grow than others, and they're massive, so they really take up a lot of real estate. But I also had some pom-pom zinnias, and those were nice too as like a little filler, although I found they didn't really do, like I rarely picked those unless I was really stuck. But zinnias were another one that I could just plant and they would keep coming and coming and coming again. So where people are a little bit more hesitant to recommend it to first year growers is that the picking process, you have to do like the wiggle test to see when they're ready to be picked, and that can be really time consuming. Yeah, so on your first year, time consuming is not really what you want, but I don't think anything can replace a zinnia on the farm, so I recommend them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we're getting there. So my sixth flower that I would recommend is Amaranth. Again, just for the fact that you put it there, it is so productive. It's so hard to kill, and you can just keep picking and picking and picking. And it's a beautiful filler. I love it. It's also not as picky about when you pick the plant. I had a row that was planted really, really close together so that I could just kind of get a single stem. And that was beautiful. And then also they get big and bushy if you give them the space, and those were just so productive and people really love them. Another one I've seen some people here on YouTube dislike, but I just love them, is Cosmos. The main thing is that they're very fragile flowers. So if you're transporting them a lot, they tend to not do as well as something like a sunflower, so they might like lose some petals. But in terms of productivity and beauty and easiness of planting, I just don't think anything compares to a Cosmo. The other thing too is that their foliage can be used as a really lovely filler, and especially in your first year, you really want to be finding flowers that can do two things at once. So even before my cosmos were completely in bloom, I was picking it as foliage and just cutting back my flowers, and then they would branch out. So really, really amazing. And I found they were really resistant to our dry summer. So not everyone loves them, but I will be definitely growing them again this year. I actually got way too many varieties, but they're just amazing. And I don't really know of anything that I could say would replace a Cosmo in a bouquet. Yeah, I don't know of any like substitution that I would find does it justice, so I recommend the Cosmo. So those are my 7 flowers that I would recommend to a first year flower farmer, or any flower farmer for that matter. I would say that you need to be growing these. I do have 2 kind of honorable mentions here. First is scabiosa. Again, I was picking from scabiosa this year, and it was just like was not dying. I couldn't kill it, so it really is a good flower, and it's reliable, and so many stems, like too many stems for me to pick them all. But I don't think they take enough real estate in bouquets. That's the thing. So would I still recommend it as a backup? 100%, because every week I was still taking from them when other crops weren't quite ready. They also have a beautiful color range, sorry. I would recommend them, but like only as a backup. The other thing too is that they're really hard to pick with their tiny little stringy stems. Harvesting them took a lot of time, but I think, to be fair, I am going to try them one more year and see how I like it. But I think if I had sort of one of those tools that you can just like cut, not a machete, but like I've seen someone has like a little round cutter. If I could take like a handful and just chop at it, I probably would have used it quite a bit more. Anyways, that being said, I am going to try it again this year. Oh, and their vase life is just wonderful, because that's another flower that even when it's past its prime, the flower itself it would dry really nice, so it stays pretty nice. Another kind of honorable mention is forget-me-nots. I don't see them talked about here on YouTube, but they did what other flowers couldn't do for me this year, which was like bring in that blue color, which without a perennial or something like a bachelor's button, which is kind of hard to grow, that's so hard to get that color in. The petals like will fall as flowers, and those are like somewhat delicate, but honestly I never had a problem with them. They do, like when you cut them, put them in water, and you'll see that they go down and then come back up. So they just need to be like sat in water for a few hours before you use them in bouquets, but otherwise I loved them. They were an amazing filler, and the other thing is that they're a perennial. So I planted those my first year, and as a first year flower farmer, a perennial that you can plant and pick off of the first year and have it come back is just too good. Perennials are really hard to come by in terms of like their expense. And for first year farmers, they really suck because you plant them and you can't pick from them for 3 years. But if you can do something like forget-me-nots, which you can start from seed, plant them, use them like an annual, and be able to rely on them to come back the next year, that's just too good to turn down. So I definitely recommend those. Alrighty, so those are my 9-ish flowers that I think you should absolutely grow as a first year flower farmer. I hope this was helpful. If any of you have any other recommendations that you would say you absolutely have to grow for your first year, leave them in the comments below. I know I consumed so much of this information and type of videos before I started my first season, so I really hope it's helpful, and have a wonderful day.